Howdy once again, it's Mr. Pete, your YouTube shop teacher. And I recently went to an auction, and you can check that out on Tips 568, where I call the video Auction Plunder. But I purchased this vise, and when I first got there, I could see from across the yard, it was in a residential area, that there was a Columbian vise. I thought, I gotta buy that. Well, when I got a little closer and started examining it, it's not a Columbian at all. It's a Ridgid, but I thought, I'll swear that this is a Columbian, but you know, I've been wrong before. But I'm going to take this apart in a few minutes. I'm going to compare it to the Columbian vises I already own, and we'll just see. This is a 5-inch. I already have a 3 and a 4-inch Columbian. You may have seen them in one of my other videos where I did a minor restoration, facelift on them. But I do like Columbian vises. They are my favorite. And this is a monster, and it weighs, well, I wrote it down. I'll tell you in a minute what it weighs, but I had to have a man carry it to my car for me. Before I move on, I have a rhetorical question for you. Why does my wife keep asking me what happened to the end table? Furthermore, what was convincing me that it was a Columbian or a Columbian-made vise was the general shape of it is so similar. And this is my little 3-incher. And also on this side, without the trademark, notice that there is a boss here with the number stamped on it, the model number, and made in USA. Very similar, don't you think? Could it be a Columbian? Now, I believe that everyone in the free world knows that many companies, in order to fill out their complete product line, pan out some of the production for products they really don't make. Now, Ridgid would have made pipe vises and things like that, but they wanted to have a complete catalog and have all of the equipment that a plumber or somebody would need. So they would have had, I'm deducing now, the Columbian company make these up and just change the trademark here. And you can see now, look at the rectangle here, how similar it is on the two vises. Also note that neither one of these has the swivel base. That's always an option. I don't care for that particular feature. Also, they have 1, 2, 3 bolt holes, both of these being much larger than the small vise. Also, the little anvil part here looks so similar, doesn't it? And what a beautiful lineup it is. The small one is model 503 at 18 pounds, 3-inch. The middle one is a 4-inch, model 504, that's 38 pounds. And the big red one is a model 50, according to Ridgid. And that 5-inch beauty weighs 60 pounds. A man had to carry it for me. I told you that already. May I say that this vise is in remarkably good condition, and I didn't pay a whole lot of money for it, although enough to where I'm very disappointed now that it's broken. And I'll get to that in a minute. But other than that, when I examined it at the auction, a superficial examination I must say, really the only problem was that this has been chiseled, and often people lay something on the anvil portion here and chisel away. That's Bubba, but and that happened at the high school too. They would just beat the heck out of that, but so much better than beating the heck out of this, which I showed you on that other apprentice vise, how it's cracked. So this is the area where you do need to pound. That's what it's made for. Okay, then you ask, what is wrong with this vise? It looks pretty good to me. Well, I didn't really try it out because it was in the middle of a pile of junk, and you might see that in that other video that I suggested. But so here I am, backing it out. Now notice that there's no movement of the jaw. Now at first I was delusional, thinking, well, maybe they even made a rapid traverse type of vise like they did for woodworking. But I thought, no way could that nut or device be strong enough to take the abuse that a big vise like this is going to have. So what in the heck is the matter with it? Is the screw strip? Is the nut strip? Well, let's take it apart and find out. These aren't too hard to take apart. You watched me in the other video do that with that 3-incher. Now this vise has been painted, which would indicate that it's probably pretty old, that it needed painting, but it was done by Bubba's apprentice. Not too bad of a job, but this is the true color that Ridgid used, at least in their pipe wrenches, and I'm assuming probably in their other products too. Now do not confuse these industrial Ridgid items with some cheap power tools that you might see in the box store that are just branded Ridgid but are of very, very marginal quality but low priced and affordable. Looking at the base now, something looks amiss. It looks like somebody welded something there in the center. I would say that it was done at the factory, except that it feels rough. I feel some spatter, like it needs to be dressed down. Furthermore, right over here, there is something that is sticking up, like something broken off, quite sharp at that. So let's take it apart and solve the mystery. In order to get the screw out of there on a Columbian, there's a collar in there with a little screw, so I'm going to take that out because that indicates to me again that it's a Columbian. Let me get that out of there. And you can see it's a pointed set screw. And I will unscrew it till the entire screw comes out. There it is. That was the collar that just hit the floor, and you can see the set screw hole right there. And this bushing here, or I should say washer, looks exactly like the other one, the 3-incher, and notice that it's bronze or oilite on one side. So I don't have to worry about replacing the screw. By the way, these are square threads, not Acme. Stronger than an Acme. And now the jaw should pull right out of there. And it does, and the beam looks like it's in good condition. There is some kind of number stamped right here, or cast rather. And there is the nut, and it pulls right out, but notice that it is a dovetail. I don't recall the smaller ones having a dovetail there, but ton 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 ton. Could it be a Columbian? There's the evidence. So it is a Columbian. Well, this should not come right out. There has to be some way of locking it in. Now it butts up against this way, you know, as you tighten it, but there's also got to be something to keep it from coming out the back side. So let me look in there and see what we got. I'm going to take the little one apart, so we got comparison here. So this is how they should come apart. And the kids would do this, and they would land to hold something real wide, or just playing around, and the thing would fall on their feet. So it comes right out. That's the 3-incher. And there is the nut. And yes, it's held in place by a dovetail here as well, if I can find the flashlight. There's the dovetail. But look, there's a pin. See that 5/16 or 3/8 pin? That is what's holding it into the dovetail. And that is missing on the big red one. And on this end, it's just butting up against the casting. Now that center hole, and is threaded, was of course the pivot point for the swivel base. So why is it welded in the big one? I just slid this across the bench, and look at the marks that I just made by moving it around, and look at the sawdust right here, if you can. This is very sharp, and upon examining it even closer, it's a broken off tap. So Bubba, before he turned it over to his apprentice to make it look pretty so it would sell, broke off a tap and walked away and reassembled it. Naughty boy. Now this is the bottom of the 3-inch vise. You can see the threaded hole, and there is the pin. Not a tap, but a pin. Well, how to fix this? Do you think a Walton tap extractor would do it? EDM? It's not something I do very often, so I'm going to make a feeble attempt at removing that, or even chiseling it out, because the actual casting isn't too terribly thick there, perhaps 3/4 of an inch. If not, plan B will be to drill a hole alongside of it and make a small piece spacer that will either be bolted or pinned into place to do the same thing. And it just has to serve as a stop. I probably shouldn't even try or waste my time with removing the tap, because that shouldn't be a threaded hole anyway. It's supposed to be a straight hole, probably a press fit. Well, I'm quitting for the day. It's time to go out and eat, and I'll sleep on this, and I'll see you on the morrow. Probably most of you know what Walton tap extractor is. They have these little fingers that go into the flutes, and you have to have the right size one. I did have 4 that weren't broken, and the one that does fit in there has been bent, so it's not very good. And do you remember when a man sent me a whole box of broken ones just for a joke? Because I just have very little faith in them, especially if the tap is stuck real bad. So in fact, if this works, I will donate $5 to my favorite charity. You're real generous, you're thinking. So let's give it a try. So using a tap wrench, and I have the 4 little fingers. These come in 2 and 3 and 4 fluters, by the way. And then the little collar is pushed way down to give it rigidity. And now we'll see if I can back it off. Got to tighten the tap wrench here. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to force it, because I have nothing to lose. If I ruin the extractor, so what? I got a whole box of ruined ones, and it only would verify my my faith in these gimmicks, although some people swear by them, absolutely swear by them. Back on camera now. Something is moving, but I don't know if I'm bending the fingers or the tap is actually turning. I can't tell yet. Nope, I'm going to try another tap wrench. By the way, I did put some Croil on there. I don't think it'll make any difference. And I've got a huge tap wrench. I'm just going to break it off. Break the fingers off to make a point. And of course, that's all that's left. Now, will I be able to get the fingers out of there? Probably made it worse for myself. Okay, I could not pull the fingers out, so I drove them through, and they dropped out to the inside, but it looks like the tap is broken. And, in fact, it's out. And now that's only a few minutes work there. I'm not playing around with the time here. I thought this would take all day. So the hole is opened. There's the broken fingers and some shards of the tap, and I can't find all of it, but the tap pretty much did disintegrate and fall into pieces by using the punches. So maybe it was already fractured. I don't think that I caused enough damage to it by twisting it with these little things. So if these did work, well, they self-destruct, you know. All right. Well, it's the next day, and I've been working on this for a little while already, but what I have done is I re-tapped the hole to clean it up. It was partially tapped, that is 3/8/16, but Bubba drilled the hole and as crooked as a dog's hind leg, and that's a little bit of a problem. He must have done it freehand with a brace and bit. But I took a grade 5 bolt, 3/8 of course, and by baguesse and bagache, cut it off, turned it down to a little bit under 5/16, because remember it's going in there at a funny angle and crooked, and then I slotted this on the milling machine. So, and I've already fitted it up, but let's do it again. And I'll put it in so it's just a little bit below flush. Now originally, as far as I can tell, those pins were pressed in, but this is going to serve the same purpose. Let's take a look at the inside. And that's what it looks like, and you can see the pin is abutted up against the nut. And there's not a whole lot of pressure that way. It's only when you're backing the jaw out, so that should serve the purpose just fine, and it can't fall out of there, and yet it can be removed if necessary, just with a screwdriver. And that made that nut just as tight as can be up into that dovetail. Next, with the Black & Decker, I'm just going to dress up this weld. We still don't know why he put that weld on there, but I want to just make it flush with an abrasive disc. Now, if I may repeat myself, this is the anvil surface that can be pounded on, but not too hard. You know, this is not like a big 90-pound anvil. Never pound on the beam, as evidenced by what Bubba's uncle did to this old Prentice vise. Now, in just a minute, I'm going to take this vise down to the milling machine and dress this off just a little bit, try to get some of those chisel marks out of there. Probably won't get all of them out. I don't want to make this too thin, but I'm going to do what I did on the 3-inch Columbian. Now, why can't I pound the heck out of this, you're saying? Well, this is relatively thin here. And you can tell a little bit better here from the little 3-incher, which I can manipulate, but just not a whole lot of material in there. That's not well lit. I know you can't see that, but and let me tell you why. I'm fully aware sometimes I'm telling you way more than you want to know, but I was just recently out at a friend's house just a mile from here. He wanted me to see some blacksmith stuff, and his dad had died, and there was an old craftsman. He said, do you want to buy anything here? Well, there was an old Craftsman vise, still mounted on the bench, and it was beat up beyond belief. In fact, this area had been broken through, and you could see the beam. So the vise was totally ruined. I would not have given 10 cents for it. That's why I'm saying you can't pound too hard on that part of the vise. It's not an anvil. By the way, this is not a Columbian anvil, but I did have several of the little Columbians. I don't know if I still got them around here or not, and they were clearly marked Columbian. They didn't have quite as nice a profile and appearance as this one. This is a beautiful little anvil. Did I say vise? A beautiful little anvil. And I've had it for a long time, and it is unmarked as to brand. The vise body is clamped down to the Bridgeport, and I have a 3 fluted here, or 3 insert type of cutter. So I'm ready to go. And again, I just want to take off a minimum amount, maybe not even remove all of the chisel marks. I don't want to get this too thin. Well, there sure wasn't much left of those inserts. You saw a few sparks, but it came out all right. It took off about 10 or 12 thousandths, and it removed all the chisel marks, but of course there's some machining marks on there, but so be it. Well, I got most of the chisel marks out there. It looks pretty good. So that pretty much concludes what I was going to do on it. Looking at the teeth and the jaws, they're actually quite good. I do not like it when they're too sharp, so these are worn enough so they're in good shape. I did not show it, but I did have the screw out before and cleaned it up real well. Now I'm putting a little grease on the screw and the nut and just a dash on the sliding surfaces, and then it's ready to reassemble. One nice thing about these larger vices, and again it's a 5-inch, but this one has an 8-inch opening, and that is very useful for some jobs. I do have a very nice set of these bronze or brass, I'm not sure which, vise caps. Now they need to be rebent and refitted for this vise because they came off one of my other vices, but they're virtually new. I seldom use these, but they can be handy as well. I need to emphasize that this was not a restoration, it was a repair job. So as far as the appearance of it, it hasn't changed much. I do not intend to paint it because Ridgid vices were red of sort, probably not this shade. I'm not going to paint it gray like a Columbian. Now let me ask you out there, I did a search and I'm trying to determine the value of this. I think you know that Wilton bought Columbia out, but I could not find a 5-inch vise, but I'm thinking this is a $600 or $800 vise if you're able to still get one. And I hope they're still American made. So this is a beauty. I really am going to enjoy using this because it's in such good shape, or it's in good shape now, I should say. You hear that spiked chainsaw next door? The handle is not bent. That in itself is rather amazing. So if you find out the value of that vise, put it in the comments, please. Thank you for watching. And here's my selection of Columbian vices. And this is Tubalcain, a Columbian vise lover. See you in my next video.